Welcome to Brentwood Inspired Living Center. Our community began in 1989 as a small worldwide unity book study group, and we've continued the momentum as an ever-evolving spiritual community. Each Sunday, you will find dynamic thought leaders delivering inspiring messages and talented musicians sharing sound healing through their melody. Here, we embrace ancient spiritual traditions, universal truths, and emerging wisdom. Let's check out this Sunday message. We're so grateful you've joined us.
Good morning. Good morning. My name is Amy Van Ling. I am gratefully, joyfully the spiritual director of this exceptional community, Brentwood Inspired Living Center, where we welcome people from everywhere, all faiths, all spiritual beliefs, all walks of life. Our purpose is to be a safe container, a safe environment for everyone to explore their spiritual path, which I happen to believe is our life path. It's all together. It's all mixed up like a big pot of soup, in my opinion. And so here we embrace ancient spiritual traditions as well as emerging wisdom, and we stay open to it all so we can take it all in and experience this life to the fullest. So each week that you tune in here, you will find a unique expression, a powerful experience, because you will discover we have a dynamic selection of thought leaders who offer an array of inspirational messages, and our talented, extremely talented variety of musicians who share their musical gift and their sound healing with us each Sunday morning. So it's always a special new experience here. We are truly many voices sharing inspiration and, leaning into positive life transformation. So I am so grateful that we are joined together co-creating this space. And I look forward to seeing you on Sunday mornings and chatting with you here on our Facebook Live. So I'll keep my phone here and look for your lovely faces to join us. So let me know when you get here. So it is February. The theme this month is living in love. And since Valentine's Day is in a couple of days, we're in the era of love here. Hence the red and being festive. I think one of my favorite quotes about love is from David Hawkins. He writes many books, Power versus Force, Letting Go. I think they're all really worthwhile reads. He says, love is often misunderstood to be an emotion. Actually, it's a state of awareness, a way of being in the world, a way of seeing oneself and others. Well, I always think that takes a different spin on love when we talk about getting bit by the love bug and love is in the air and all that kind of stuff. So kind of a different perspective on love. So as you enter into the space, everybody, I invite you to take an inward breath of the spirit, which is my favorite definition of inspiration. This is a moment where we can open up to catch an idea, inspiring thought, inspiring vision, message, a feeling dropped in by the spirit, dropped in by that source energy. So this happens when we make ourselves available. So I invite you to do that right now, to make yourself available, to tune into your inner wisdom and feel that space. So you're in the flow where you can be available to new ideas and new perceptions. And I think Abraham Hicks calls this like the receptive mode. I think that's the term, the phraseology he uses, the receptive mode. So tune into the receptive mode here. So greetings of love, sweet people. Michael J. Allen says, good morning, all. Love frequently, infinitely fills your heart. Go Eagles. Okay, is this Super Bowl stuff? Because I don't know anything I don't know who's playing. Okay, I've been a cheer mom for I think maybe a couple decades now. And I still really don't know the game football. I've always gone to watch my cheerleaders, my daughters cheer, but I still really don't know. So everybody, if you're watching football today, you're going to have to tell me what that's all about. Are the Eagles the team, one of the teams? And Dennis says, as usual, Hawkins on love is right on. Yes. Hawkins on love is right on. Yes. Thank you, Michael J. Allen. I don't know a lot about football, but I do know it's Super Bowl. I did hear it was the Super Bowl day. So I know people like that. So greetings of love, sweet, sweet, precious people. Tell me what you like for Valentine's Day. Valentine's Day is coming up. I told Shani in a recent email when we were discussing today that I think I might have a glitch, because I really don't like chocolates or red roses. I'm the type of person who would much prefer something very practical, like gardening tools or something like that for Valentine's Day. But this might reflect my love language, which is acts of service. My number one love language, which is acts of service. I don't know if you know about the 5 love languages. This is an old book, and who's the author? Gary Chapman, is it? Gary Chapman. Anyway, there's a quiz you can take online. I'll find the link and I'll put it here. And supposedly there's 5 love languages, and you have, a top 1 or 2 that you get your love tank filled up by. And so my top 1 is acts of service. So maybe that's where the gardening tools come in. But the key here is that often we share our top love language with others. And so, if we're a receiving gifts person and you're, just showering somebody with gifts and they've like ranked a 0 on that, then they might be having like a low love tank, and you're going, what is wrong? I keep, sharing gifts. So there are 5 of them. Let me just say what they are. Quality time, physical touch, words of affirmation, receiving gifts, and acts of service. So you might fall somewhere in there. So I'll drop that quiz. I'll find it here in a minute and drop it here. Nancy says, good morning, everyone. Happy Super Bowl day. Yes, it is. Who are the 2 teams? Eagles and who? Because I don't know. Tells you a little bit about me. But I do love Valentine's Day, which is coming up. And when my children were young, I used to read in this story. It was about the Saint Valentine who saved love. It was like the story, and I who knows if he was a priest or a bishop or something, who performed secret weddings against the wishes of all the authorities at the time, because they didn't want marriage to happen, because they wanted all the men for the war. And so Saint Valentine saved love. That was the gist of that little story. Blessings, everybody. I'm so glad that you're here on this journey with us. I am so thrilled to be here this lovely morning with Dr. Shani Robins, Mirabai, and Steve Bangs, who together are HEARTDREAM and Paris Winter. I am so grateful for Shani Robins for his willingness to bring us the morning message today, which is the realism of dysfunctional love and its obstacles and opportunity costs to radiant love. Now, doesn't that title just alone feel like a powerful energetic activation? Let's just sit with that. So, whoa, that's big. That's a big conversation we're going to have today. And we will continue into the workshop at 11:30 to 12:30 Pacific time for more of the same topic Q&A with this amazing, wise, compassionate psychologist, relationship expert, Dr. Shani Robins. So we're so grateful that you're here with us today and willing to zoom in and share your time, energy, and wisdom. We're very grateful. Thank you. Thank you. Pleasure. We have the fabulous mystical duo HEARTDREAM, and they are here to share their incredibly dynamic sound healing, soul nourishing songs and musical melody. And they are in the middle of transitioning and they're in the midst of moving. And so they were willing to take the time in the midst of all that, because moving can be a lot. So we appreciate you taking the time to be here with us. Remember that everything you hear from HEARTDREAM can be found on their website, and that's heartdream.com. And they're amazing, and you can get the music in all different forms, on thumb drive, on CDs, download it, all that. So you can find them there. And then we have our beloved Paris Winter with us, and she is here to share our selected inspirational reading today and our abundance blessing. And we are so grateful that you are here with us today in our tone. What did you say? Our royal tone colors. We had purples and reds and all those deep tones today. I like that. We all match. We don't actually call each other in the morning and find out what we're wearing, but it seems to work out that way a lot of the time. Jennifer is here. Welcome in, Jennifer. Pat is here. She says, hello there, family. Love is in the air. Yes, it is. It is in the air. Florence is here. She says, good morning. Let me scroll back. Did I miss anybody? Mitchell is here. Hello. Good morning. Dennis is here. We know Marianne is here. Welcome in, beloveds. Luinda's here. She says, good morning, Amy, Shani, Paris, and HEARTDREAM. Welcome in, everybody. It is really, really great to see you here. Thank you for being with us. Thank you for tuning in. We warmly welcome you. We welcome you into our space. So here at Brentwood Inspired Living Center, we love to pray, and our affirmative prayer reflects a knowing that all events, circumstances, people, situations are in divine order, even if by the world of appearances, it might not look that way in that moment. So metaphysics is about seeing beyond the physical. And so we know that our thoughts create, but that's because our thoughts create a vibration and transmit a frequency. And this transmission of energy is creating our life experience. You know, it sounds kind of complicated, but it's really kind of simple because then we just get to choose. We get to choose the life that we create. So our affirmative prayer focuses on creating that vibration and the knowing that something wonderful is happening in your life. Currently, our prayer and healing request page on our website where you can submit your prayer and send it in is on pause because we were having a praying prayer bot that was sending hundreds of prayer requests a day to our email. So we had to sort of put a hold on that for the moment. So if you go there, that you won't find that page right now. It will be reinstated shortly. But in the meantime, if you have a prayer request, please send it to me, amy@brentwoodilc.org, and I will get that to our prayer team for you. So we don't want to miss any prayers just because the prayer page is down for the moment. And remember that Silent Unity always has 24/7 prayer on their website. It's a 1-800 number, I believe. It's been like 100 years of continuous prayer. It's pretty amazing. So this morning I would like to invite you in to a breath, an activation of our mission statement. So feel into this with me, and thank you. Thank you for being on this mission with us. It's beautiful to be together. We are an open, heart-centered, spiritual community, honoring the one presence within us, and we welcome all people to connect, grow, and expand in wisdom, compassion, and love. And we're so glad that you're here together with us, creating this magical, loving space. So I'm going to hand the screen over to HEARTDREAM, Mirabai, and Steve Bangs now for our first song, which is our community song. And this is the time when we invite you to sing along and sort of get all that energy moving in your body. So thank you, Mirabai and Steve.
Give me love, give me love, give me peace on earth. Give me life, keep me free from birth. Give me hope, help me cope with this heavy load. Trying to touch and reach you with heart and soul. Take hold of my hand. Won't you please, oh, won't you give me love, give me love, give me peace on earth, give me life, keep me free from birth, give me hope, help me cope with this heavy load, trying to touch and reach you with all heart and soul. Oh,
Yay! So we all feel the flow now, right? Thank you both so much. Appreciate you. Okay, where are we? We're going to hand the screen to Paris now for our inspirational reading today. Thank you, Paris.
Well, good morning. It's a beautiful day, and I'm so pleased to be able to share with you our inspirational reading. These thoughts about love are entitled Love Is, and were written by our own Pat McCulley in October of 2017. Love is. It is important to write about what love looks like. Love is often overused, glossed over, and simplified. We view love through our own filter. What may look like love to one may be misdirecting, smothering, and unkind. Love means different things to different people, yet there are traits that love is, even though its magnificence is beyond our human words. Love is. Love looks beyond the obvious. Love knows all people have a beautiful spirit, albeit dulled by negativity. Love does not criticize, nor is it impatient. Love knows that all is love or a request for love. Love knows that everyone has their own path and is not judgmental. Love knows that people are doing exactly what they're meant to do, even though we may not understand it. Love knows that when we say, I just don't understand how someone could do that, it is not negative about that other person, but shows a lack of our own understanding. Love knows that what we see is all a small part of the big picture, which is divine. Love knows that all is divine timing. Love understands that if one thinks they have to forgive, they are assigning blame, which is a result of the ego. Love knows that nothing can hurt our higher self, and there is no blame and no forgiveness is needed. Love knows that all is a lesson to understand who we really are, and possibly we have planned these events before we incarnated to do just that. Love understands what is meant by divine right action, and so it is.
Thank you, Paris. And I think if I remember, Pat wrote that with our dear beloved Chuck, who is no longer physically with us. Lots of love coming to you both, HEARTDREAM, for the music that we just experienced. Did I put it back on gallery? I did. Just slow. My computer is a little. Jennifer said, beautiful HEARTDREAM. Thank you for singing one of my favorite George Harrison songs. Brought tears to my eyes. Luinda said, beautiful sound, HEARTDREAM. Just what I needed to hear. So turning it right back.
each other. I am spirit. I am love. I am spirit. I am God's love. In the heart of God, beyond tranquil bliss, from the cold soul, only love exists. I am spirit. I am love. I am spirit. I am God's love. I am spirit. I am love. I am spirit. I am God's love. I am
So beautiful. Thank you both. That was I Am Spirit. And I dropped the link to heartdream.com in the chat, in the comment feed. Right. Zoom is chat, Facebook's comment feed. Well, you know what I'm talking about. So it's there if you'd like to go look for I Am Spirit. Such a beautiful melody. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, Paris, it is time for our prosperity time, our blessing of abundance. I appreciate you're here.
Well, that was so beautiful. I absolutely love when Heart Dream is here. One of my favorites of our musicians. So that was just so pretty. And I am so pleased to be able to pray with you this morning, just to put us in the right space. I invite you to join me now for our prayer of plenitude as we welcome and receive the glorious abundance today and every day. Take a deep breath, breathing in love and light, and hold it gently. Now, release it slowly as you connect through your heart with our message of prosperity. We come together today, opening our hearts and minds to the one spirit, the light, infinite mind, knowing that there is only one power and one life, and that is the life of spirit. We affirm that we are one with spirit, and there is no one, nothing that is separate from this oneness. We are one with the infinite mind that has created all that is. We know that the divine qualities of peace, of power, of plenty, of wisdom are already within each of us, and we embrace those qualities now. We step forward with love and anticipation, standing in the truth of who and what we are, saying yes to our prosperity, harmony, health, order, love, and our amazing expansion in all its forms. And with the greatest gratitude, we accept this transformation of consciousness for ourselves and our community. We know that it is done, and we give thanks. Now we release, we let go, and we let spirit do its perfect work through us. We trust the universe to provide for us. It is done, and so it is. And we have just a few announcements for the last week of February and March 2023. An important reminder that our community circle and potluck are scheduled for February 18th at the Senior Center, and that's been canceled. It will be rescheduled to a later date. So let's raise the roof on the first Sunday of the month in March. Sunday, March 5th is a glorious special in-person service at the West Island Room at the Antioch Community Center. We will begin the service at 10 a.m., followed by our short Brentwood Inspired Living annual meeting. And at the end, there is a catered lunch, so we hope you show up for that. Games and prizes for all. It's a party day, so you won't want to miss 11 to 1:30 afterwards. Our favorite fundraiser, the timeshare deck of cards raffle, began February 1st, I can't talk, February 5th, and there are only 11 cards left. So don't miss your chance to win a 5-night, 6-day vacation, 1-bedroom timeshare with a full kitchen, sleeps 4, at a luxury resort, and your choice of cities like Palm Springs, Angels Camp, Lake Tahoe, Las Vegas, or possibly other cities in the US. Tickets are only $25 and available now by calling Nancy or on March 5th until they are gone. And payments can be made by PayPal, check, cash, or Zelle. The winner will be drawn on March 18th or alternatively March 5th at the annual meeting if they are all sold out. You do not need to be present to win, but you can see Nancy or Jan for details and consider giving a family member or friend the chance of a lifetime. So remember to bring an extra $25 for the raffle when you come in person on March 5th, and bring your food bank donations and recyclables as well. Blessings and gratitude to you all.
Thank you, Paris. Appreciate all of that and getting us into the abundance flow. And I would love to see everybody there on March 5th. I will be there. And come to the annual meeting too, and the catered lunch. Okay, I'm going to hand it back to HEARTDREAM for our final song this morning. Thank you so much. This is Only Love is Real.
Into the emerald forest, feel the breeze upon your face. Let the trees uplift your spirit.
In your sun-warm heart there's grace.
In the light of sacred future,
Stand the echoes of the past.
what is real, what really matters.
Loving hearts will always last. Love is all there is, circling round the wheel. I am that I am. Only love is real.
Dream into the perfect silence,
Where the sunset meets the moon,
mystic towers of all memory.
ancient lessons done so soon. Love is all there is, circling round the wheel. I am that I am. Only love is real. Let the harmony of nature fill your heart with song. Let the rhythm of compassion last your whole life long.
Now release, resist no further,
Just surrender deep inside.
resting in the arms of Mother.
Peace will be your only guide. Love is all there is, circling round the wheel. I am that I am. Only love is real. Only love is real. Only love is real. Only love is
So beautiful. Thank you for being with us. And remember, that's heartdream.com. And I dropped their link here in the chat for you to find the music that you heard this morning that is so uplifting and inspiring. Thank you both. Thank you, all three of you, Divine Souls, Paris, Mirabai, and Steve, for joining us this morning to activate this energetic space. We're so appreciative of your essence and your presence and the joy that you bring. Thank you. Thank you. We will see you on this side of the technology. Thanks for sharing yourselves with us this morning. We appreciate it. Okay, beautiful beings of love. I get to be here with Dr. SHANI Robins, which is just a true gift for me. And I'm going to read you about him. So I could not find the bio that I normally have for SHANI, which it must be old because then I went to our website and printed what we have there. So I get to read, and this is kind of fun because it's like everything about what SHANI's done. And I really like that because I haven't looked at this in a really long time. So now you get to know SHANI a little better. SHANI Robins, PhD, pioneered the field of wisdom therapy in 1998. He is a licensed psychologist by the California Board of Psychology and is the founder and director of the Wisdom Therapy Institute since 2000. He's an instructor at Stanford University Medical School's Health Improvement and Be Well programs and the director of clinical training at Sophia University. Dr. Robins received his BA in psychology and philosophy from UCLA in 1989, his MA and PhD in cognitive experimental psychology from UC Santa Barbara in 1996, completed a 2-year National Institute of Mental Health postdoc at UC Irvine in 1999, and a PhD respecialization in clinical psychology in 2002. He has published and has given numerous clinical workshops, invited talks, scientific conference presentations, and corporate consultations nationally and internationally on wisdom therapy and its relationships to cognitions, emotions, stress reduction, relationships, workplace effectiveness, coping, emotional intelligence, performance, and organizational consulting. He is a member of the American Psychological Association and California Psychological Association and has won many honors and awards. In his spare time, SHANI plays racquetball, chess, and Go, rollerblades, salsa dances, runs marathons, and watches sunrises. And he is an extraordinary human who does actually walk his talk and practices what he preaches, a true loving being in the world, sharing divine wisdom about relating in healthier ways and living positively and opening our hearts to living in love. So thank you, SHANI, for being here. I'm going to pray us in and then hand the screen over, and then SHANI gets to take us away for as long as he wants. So let me just invite you into the breath, into the moment, to center into your peaceful place and tune into the feeling of gratitude for our oneness with the one great source, the source energy, the one vibration of life that places the galaxies and propels the planets. We're grateful to be an expression of this aliveness and consciousness and love in this human form. And we know that something magnificent is happening to us, through us, around us, and we're filled with joy and peace to be here, overflowing in a celebration today of community, of love, of life, celebrating that we're blessed to be a blessing. And we're so thankful and grateful for this wise, precious soul with us today, Dr. SHANI Robins. We cover him in our love and we pour our blessings of gratitude and appreciation over him and open our hearts and minds to allow the wisdom message to penetrate us today. And I release this word into the field of divine intelligence, into the great expanse, and I know it is all complete and done. And so it is. Ashe. Namaste. Thank you, SHANI.
Thank you. Thank you for the kind introduction. That all sounds very impressive. I'd love to meet this guy. Yeah, today we're talking about dysfunctional love. In the past, we've talked a few times about what wise love looks like, and we'll mention some of that too as in contrast. But a few examples have come my way in terms of dysfunctional love some with the clients I see and others and friends, relatives. And so I thought I would talk about that and try to clarify what that looks like, because sometimes it's ambiguous and confusing when you're in the midst of that. So let's start out with there's going to be a few good choice quotes and jokes around this, because you can't talk about dysfunctional relationships without bringing some humor to it. It just begs for it. So one is a kid asks one of his parents, I heard that in some parts of the world, in arranged marriages, a man and a woman don't even know each other until they get married. And the parent replies, that's actually true in all parts of the world. So there's something about that aspect of things. But I would push it a step further. It's not that the people don't even know each other before they get married. It's that they don't even know themselves before they get married. That's a much bigger, deeper problem. And that the skill sets are nowhere near what they need to be to do something as complex as have a relationship. So that's another big, big problem. It's like trying to drive a car with never having been in a car, not knowing what a car even is, and having no idea what traffic is. And that's the mild version. It's even worse than that. But the other aspects of it is that it's not just the complexity of driving the car, but the danger that you put yourself in and that you put others in if you do that with too little knowledge. And so we start putting together some of these analogies and you start getting some appreciation of what that is. There's a wonderful quote by Rumi also. The task is not to seek for love, but merely to seek and find all the barriers within yourself that you have built against it. So we look for the perfect person, we look for the perfect love, whereas most of it is our development, our fears, our lack of emotional intelligence, our lack of impulse control, our lack of regulation, our lack of empathy. When those things are not high, it doesn't bode well. It doesn't go well. It's like driving blind. So imagine not only being ignorant of driving and what a car is and the rules of the road, but when you finally do get into a car, you close your eyes as you start driving. So these are just some of the very bare bones metaphors. And in my opinion, it's a lot worse than that. So to have interactions with low empathy is just genuinely blind. We're just not aware what the other person is feeling, but it's worse than that. Not only are we not aware of what the other person's feeling, there's also not caring about being aware of what the other person's feeling. That's even worse. It's the old joke of what's the difference between ignorance and apathy? I don't know and I don't care, right? It's a double whammy. Ignorance is one thing. It's bad enough. But ignorance of how ignorant we are, that's even worse, right? There's arrogance on top of ignorance. And unfortunately, ignorance is often accompanied by arrogance. The less we know, the more we think we know. The more we know, the more we realize how little we know. So the more we find out, and the more sophisticated we tend to get in life, the greatest scientists in the world and in history, when you read them later in their life, they're among some of the most humbling things that you read. They talk about how little they know, even though these are Nobel Prize winners, these are pioneers of fields. So in relationships, when we're going back and forth from science and in relationships, the assumptions that we know what we're doing and that we know better than others, and this doesn't take expertise. Those are brutal assumptions that are being made on the front end. And sadly, society does very little to nothing to train us in how to do this stuff well. So it's almost a Herculean task at the get-go. And to add insult to injury, we get no training to do this Herculean task. So that's our starting point to discuss some of the dysfunctions and to delineate some of those things. There are some things we don't have time to do in this short period that we have today, and there's no point replicating what's already been done so well. Like, for example, to talk about the gaslighting, and you can look up gaslighting and see the 7 items of what gaslighting is. We can mention, a couple just to kind of remind people, like, for example, blaming others for our dysfunctions. When there's only 2 people in the room and there's disagreement, if one of them is highly dysfunctional, that dysfunctional person can point their finger to the other one, even if the other one is perfectly healthy and even sophisticated and mature and empathic, especially if they're empathic. Because if they're empathic, and if you add humility to the empathy, they'll seriously consider the criticism as if it's genuine, when the reality is the criticism is coming from deep pathology. So that's one example of gaslighting, where the dysfunctional person tends to put the weight of the pathology onto the healthy person. And the healthy person, being healthy, genuinely considers that as a possibility. And that goes on for years. So that's, we're talking in very short sentences, things that go on for years and decades of misery. A couple of other things, insecurity and jealousy. So someone who's insecure, their self-esteem is too low. They don't think enough of themselves. And now they're putting that on the other person as if the other person did something wrong. For example, you're sitting in a restaurant, somebody's looking around, the insecure, jealous person says, "Are you looking at that person over there? Do you think they're attractive? You're flirting with that person," and so on. It's like, well, actually, I was just looking around the restaurant. But the jealous person, insecure, sees the whole world through the prism of insecurity, and it's a fear-based way of approaching the world. And once fear is a fundamental way of approaching the world, jealousy being one of the fundamental fears, then everything is downhill from there, and there is absolutely no way to mediate that from the healthy person's point of view. You can reassure from now to doomsday that no, I didn't look at that person, I'm just looking around, and so on and so on. And none of that will be good enough. There'll always be some way of looking at through the insecure prism. But even beyond that, so some people would say, well, no, really, I wasn't doing that. But that itself is a pathological interaction. The even more sophisticated interaction is, well, I wasn't doing that, but even if I was, so what? If I was appreciating that attractive person over there, what's the problem with that? So the insecure person, if they were honest, would answer, I don't want you appreciating anybody else because it makes me feel insecure, as if you're going to like somebody more and possibly leave me. And that brings us to codependency. So again, we don't have an opportunity to flesh all these things out. Just to evoke the big items here of gaslighting, codependency, and other things as just obvious problem spots that each of which requires years of work. And that's assuming someone's highly motivated. Without the years of work, it's almost hopeless. And that's a big thing for a psychologist to say, who's devoting his life to human development. So the reason I'm saying that is because way too many people have put way too much time and energy into wishful thinking and colluding on the fact that this thing will just simply change. Why? Because we're hoping it will and we're promising it will. But no, that's a nice try, but let's talk about, say, addiction. Addiction, I'm a big fan of programs, AA programs and other things. They do a lot of good work. They try hard. The problem is that despite all the best programs in the world, and I have clients I work with on addiction too, and they're in AA, and they have a social support group and so on. And with all that, the relapse rates are 90 to 95%. And that's people who do all that. People who don't do all that, the relapse rates are 99.999%. It's almost a guaranteed. Multiple relapses over decades. So when you look at that data, it's sobering, no pun intended. And that data confirms it's concurrent with other relationship issues that combine addiction with other things like personality disorders, which narcissism and borderline personality are the 2 leading contenders that account for a tremendous amount of suffering in pathological relationships. So those 2 categories, addiction and personality disorders, again, are not only just so toxic to relationships and are so prevent being able to move in a direction that we'll describe in a moment in terms of what an ideal relationship could look like. The obstacles are so overwhelming that it's, technically in theory, nothing is impossible. But, the other fun quote is that in theory, there's no difference between theory and practice, but in practice there is. So in theory, everything is changeable. Everything is doable. We could sprout wings tomorrow. We may have genes that are dormant for wings, and with the right environment, suddenly the wings kick in and we start flying. The likelihood of that is pretty low. So from experienced psychology point of view, where thousands of studies have been done on this for over half a century, the data is in. It's not subtle. So again, is there still hope? Of course. But without recognizing it, there's also hope for climbing Kilimanjaro. But how many of us will do what it takes to do that, right? Because if we don't do what it takes, we'll die up at the peaks. If we're not in shape, if we don't have oxygen, if we don't have others helping us, then it's not just impossible, it's dangerous. So that's the idea around all of this, just to give a very sober and realistic view of what we're up against here. And that's just the dysfunctional pathological parts. That's just to get to normative, and normative is not that impressive. And I've talked about that in other talks here, that normatives, things like yelling and name calling and things like that at moderate levels, right? Not at pathological levels. Most people say, yeah, we are, if one of us tells their friend, yeah, we had this blowout fight and we yelled at each other for an hour and then we apologized and then, oh, I'm glad you apologized. It's good. Yeah, I know what you mean. We did that too. Everyone's nodding to that as if somehow that's okay, that adults raise their voice to each other. How did we not jettison that when we were 6 years old? Raising our voice, ever. It's like, well, it's human. No, it's human for 6-year-olds, but it's not human for people who transcended the developmental stage of a 6-year-old, which most adults have not. I hope this talk is not as negative as it sounds, because it'll pick up, I promise. So there's something somebody once asked me, am I optimistic or pessimistic or idealistic, and I like to say I'm a realistic idealist. And what I mean by that is that I'm realistic about what is, and I'm idealistic about what could be. But just because we're idealistic about what could be in terms of human development and the potential is phenomenal, we can't ignore the realism of what is, which is tremendously sobering and challenging, particularly if skill sets are not high, like trying to climb Kilimanjaro without working out first for 6 months. I climbed on Mount Whitney with a few friends about 20 years ago. We trained for 6 months for that, and it was brutal. It's 15,000 feet. We had to go to the base for a few days to acclimate. We had to take CoQ10 for altitude fever sickness. We had to really pare down what we take up with us, take our time walking up. We did the whole thing in 1 day. Went up, took about 13 hours to go up to the peak and about 3 hours to come back down. So we started pre-dawn, came back at sunset. One of the hardest things I've ever done. I'm catching myself. I didn't have to do that. I chose to do. I'm glad I did it. It gave me a sobering recognition of what some of these monumental tasks are, and they do have psychological analogs. And so once in a while, it's good to do physically what you think is impossible, because that gives you a sense of what can be done and achieved psychologically, but it also gives you a palpable awareness of what you're up against. And when people say, oh, I'm sorry about that, I won't yell at you again. Really? As if that somehow, it's like saying, oh, sorry about that. And let's be in marathon shape right now and just snap your fingers. Like, that's not quite enough. It's as we pointed out in one of the other talks, did you ever notice you can't just drive by a gym? You actually have to stop and walk in and do stuff to get in shape. And apologies is like driving by a gym. Intention of wishful thinking, of saying, I'm sorry, I'm going to do better, is driving by a gym. The question is, after you say that sentence, do you then sit down immediately for 2 hours and read 3 chapters out of John Gottman's book and then meditate for an hour? If you don't do that, the words are completely hollow, completely. It's worse than hollow because they set everybody up for failure and more misery down the line, including the person who's promising. So all of that said, I can go on and on, as you can tell, about all this. And it's living an unskillful life has extraordinary number of downfalls. Dragging someone else there with you is incredibly unfair. But when somebody is unskilled and not that empathic, unfortunately, not only do they drag someone down with them, but they're not that empathic. That's why they're dragging them down with conflicts and other things. But because they're not empathic, they don't care that they're dragging them down with them, unfortunately. So it's a lose-lose. So everybody has to have their own boundaries around what they're willing to do. And we're all responsible for those boundaries. I've let that go in my past, in distant past, in terms of boundaries that I allowed dysfunction in my life. And after a couple of brutal ones of those, I learned better to not allow dysfunction in my life. It took decades to learn that. And I didn't have anyone telling me then what I'm saying now. I wish I had, which is why I'm saying that now. Very matter of fact. So when you see borderline personality, when you see symptoms, and by the way, after doing, being a licensed psychologist for 25 years and dealing with diagnoses are just placeholders. They're just names. We're not talking about whether some threshold is met for a particular name. It's like, is someone a narcissist or are they not a narcissist? That's an irrelevant question. Is someone showing traits of narcissism, directions, tendencies? That's what it is. So nothing has to pass threshold for certain names or diagnoses, because sometimes people say, oh, so you're saying I'm technically not a narcissist, or it's not technically borderline personality? Phew, what a relief. As if somehow all the tendencies suddenly disappeared. It's like, no, we're all in the continuum. And yeah, if it passes threshold for that, it's seriously pathological to levels that are monumental, but it could be right close to that, even if it doesn't pass threshold for diagnosis. Like, for example, you have to meet, let's say, 12 out of 15 criteria for the DSM to get diagnosed with narcissism. So did a person get diagnosed? No, they only met 8 out of 12 criteria, as if somehow that's a big win, right? That's still going to be incredibly pathological and dysfunctional and unpleasant. And borderline personality as well. And it's not a gender thing. Men and women both do personality disorders. The frequencies shift slightly. So narcissism tends to be 3-to-1 men to women, borderline personality 3-to-1 women to men. And then there's the lucky few that have both. And you really want to, don't even begin to imagine. Some of you may have experienced it, what that's like. So just to give you a sense, the field of psychology, the DSM, the Diagnostic Statistical Manual, is now on DSM-5. DSM-1, DSM-2 and 3, 3R, revised, 3R. So this thing has undergone, 10 different versions with revisions and things. It used to be 100 pages. It's now 1,000 pages. So you ask yourself, did pathology really increase that much in the world in the last 50 years? Or are we recognizing the pathology more in the last 50 years? It's probably more of the latter, that the human condition has been what it is, probably pretty similarly for millennia. We're now recognizing more and more of what dysfunctions look like. And so out of 1,000 pages of personality disorders, schizophrenia, major depressions, all the phobias, you name it. Out of all of those things, in my opinion, the borderline personality and narcissistic personality tendencies are by far the hardest thing in the world to deal with. That's my opinion. Other people may say other things, but for lots of reasons. One of which is there is no medication to deal with them. That's a big deal. For schizophrenia and major depression and bipolar, there's medication. Those things are serious, but there's medication that can seriously mediate those. Personality disorders, there is no medication. You can take some things for anxiety and so on, maybe to reduce some of the fears and anxiety slightly, but the tendencies have been there for decades, practically from birth. That's the other piece. So when you talk about underneath those things are attachment style, insecure attachment style. So that's useful verbiage. Means what? It means in part that the world is not safe and people are not trustworthy. And that conclusion was gotten to when a person was 1 or 2 years old. And since then, they built up a worldview and a set of behaviors and patterns that try to make up for that. So they spent years and decades not trusting, needing to control things because they can't trust. When they can't control things, dominating, bullying, retaliating, being aggressive. It's a tough way to live. And I don't, you know, I have compassion for the suffering they went through their whole life. But what I also have is some empathy for myself being on the receiving end of that. It's no fun to be on the receiving end of that. It's like somebody drowning and they're pulling you down. I have plenty of compassion for somebody drowning, but I don't want to be near them unless I'm a lifeguard and I can save them. Because if I'm not trained and I'm near them, they will pull me down. And that's a good metaphor for somebody with personality disorders. They will pull us down. And I don't care how skilled anybody is. There are, just to give you a sense of how pernicious this is, a whole new therapy had to be developed to deal with borderline personality disorder, named dialectical behavioral therapy. It's a combination of cognitive behavioral therapy and mindfulness. It's a variant to deal with massive emotional dysregulation and so on. It emphasizes those kinds of things. But it's a combination of those two things, but it's a whole therapeutic intervention specific for that diagnosis. There's very few things in the world, schizophrenia, bipolar, or other things didn't get that, but borderline personality did. So when we're talking about dysfunctional pathological behaviors, patterns, and so on, deep fear that started from birth practically, and life was led with that. And now jealousies and other things are emerging from the fears and dysfunctions. It's to say, I promise things will be different, it's an understatement of the century to say that's not realistic. If efforts are made to embrace a multitude of transformational practices like therapy twice a week, support groups, reading voraciously for hours a week, gold standard materials on psychological change, on mindfulness, on emotional intelligence, on empathy, and it gets processed and practiced every day, multiple times a day. If all of that is done, there's a chance for change. That doesn't guarantee change, but at least there's a chance. If even one of those components is not done, the chance goes, in my opinion, very quickly to zero. So that's why promises, it's like, imagine if we ate nothing but chocolate and cake for 10 years. And, you know, don't get me started on chocolate and tiramisu, right? Some of you know my affinity for that, near fetish affinity for tiramisu. So imagine if I ate that for 10 years, gained 100 pounds, and I say, you know what, I really want to lose that weight. But here's my strategy. I'm going to apologize for eating the tiramisu. I'm not going to see a nutritionist. I'm not going to start exercising. And maybe I'll walk once in a while and just see how it feels. It's like, seriously? If my psychology hasn't changed and my social patterns haven't changed, and I'm not consulting experts and I'm not applying this on a day-to-day basis, there's no way. Apologizing is not going to help. That's interesting intention, but that's like a kid wishing for Santa Claus. That's how realistic that is. So, and then all this said, there's something even more unfortunate around all of this, and that is that while we're busy with pathology, this is a placeholder that's taking the place of something else. It's like having a job that's completely different from your passion and doing that 8 hours a week, 8 hours a day. So if you always wanted to be a musician and you're doing a job in accounting 8 hours a day, you're not doing much with your music. Or if you wanted to be an engineer and you wanted to be a ski instructor, or if you wanted to be an artist, but you were an engineer, whatever the job is, whatever the passion is, doing something else for 8 hours a day is a placeholder that's taking away the opportunity cost to pursue our passion, to pursue something more positive, to pursue something that's more skillful, including pathological relationships. When you start looking at the practicality of that we have X number of hours a day, and those of us who've been on the planet for a few decades are realizing life is this short. And did you notice it's passing even faster as we go? We have a lot less left. You start realizing time is passing. This is it. This is not a dress rehearsal. This is it, right? Time is passing. And there are thousands and even millions, I would argue, of really good people in the world. So just on a practical level here, it's like, what am I doing? Spending what little time I have with pathology when there's 1,000 people I'm implicitly saying no to. I'm sorry, I don't have time to eat tiramisu now. I've got to eat rocks while I'm, it's like, what are we doing? It's ridiculous. And I'm not saying to give up on things willy-nilly. It's like everything has challenges in life. But if somebody's not developmentally oriented, dramatically so, and the more dysfunctional they are, the more developmentally oriented they better be. And if they're not dramatically so, and doing everything we've talked about, again, the probability is near zero. So even if they're begging and wishing to be in relationship, we can be compassionate to that, but it's like, it's again, wishing and wishing for something like Santa Claus or the Easter Bunny, or wishing that we would be fit without exercise. We can entertain that and we can hear it, but recognize as an adult, as a realistic adult, that it's really not likely to have much change. And even if it does, we're talking years or decades for that change. And I'm rooting for that person, just not with me. That's another thing. It doesn't have to be hate or anger. It's like, I'm all for everybody in the world having a happy life and developing. I just don't want to spend the next 10 years being yelled at and hearing 1,500 apologies. Call me crazy, but there's a lot of good people in the world, like good people like yourselves and other good people to interact with. And all of you know Fred, and you and I are great friends, and others and others that just, and there's so many good works to do in the world and so on. And my life is devoted to human development and helping others. But in terms of free time, in terms of personal time, there's so little of that. Am I really going to allow myself to be on the receiving end of dysfunction and yelling or name calling? No. And it's my fault if I do. It's not the other person's fault. The other person is already presented to me what stage of development they're in by yelling at me a few times. And if I keep saying yes to that, it's not their fault. They're already, right? They may claim they're doing something different or will not do everything different and so on, but they're making unrealistic claims. It's my job to realize how unrealistic those claims are and realize life is quite short and make decisions and choices based on that. And at the very, very least, to shift the burden of proof, even if we wanted to be abnormally idealistic, unrealistically idealistic, let's say, to shift the burden of proof so dramatically where we now, it's called the button down mode. We move on with our life. And if by some miracle, none of us are omniscient, if by some miracle something extraordinary happens and somebody undergoes tremendous transformation that looks like it's lasting for years, not weeks or months, people can hang by their thumbs for a month or two, but genuine transformation that everything in their life has changed. How they do things, how they react to things, what they do, what they choose, emotions, cognitions, decisions, everything. And there's a year or 2 or 3 of evidence that that's happened, I'm willing to reconsider relationship with literally anyone. With Donald Trump. If Trump suddenly goes, you know what? After 75 years of just abusing the hell out of everyone around me in the world, I had this major epiphany. And for the last 6 months, I've been doing nothing but reading John Gottman and all these other books and the Dalai Lama, and I've meditated and I've gone through this major transformation. And I hear, and then if I listen to him interviewed and he says, yeah, I mean, I'm all for peaceful resolutions for things. And what do you think about so-and-so? I think there's a skillful version for that. And what about what you did so-and-so? I have deep regret and compassion. And again, I'll apologize again for that. And if this goes on for months, someone says, hey, you want to spend time with Trump? Sure. The likelihood of that is pretty low. That's what I'm saying. And even if you wanted to pretend that he's done that for whatever reason, like to avoid prison, for example, then it's worth noting that his motivation is desperate. And it's understandable that he's desperate, but just because he's desperate, I don't have to suddenly be unrealistic and suddenly allow for my short amount of time on this planet to be taken up by something that's incredibly unrealistic. So the question is, how much data do we need to draw these conclusions and so on, and to fully appreciate all of these dysfunctions, when on the other side of all of this is some tremendous things, right? There's, I put into, some of you have heard of Chat GPT, right? The AI that's now producing all these amazing content. I thought it'd be fun to actually put in pathological relationship for the AI and to see what the AI comes up with. And it came up first with the phrase codependence, and says a pathological relationship tends to be a codependent one in which one person is overly dependent on the other, emotionally or physically or financially. There's a sense of one person may feel like they're responsible for the other feels dependent on the first, imbalance of power, too much control or influence over one or the other. One person needs more control or so on, and on and on. It goes for a lot of these things, which I thought was pretty spot on. So I'm pretty amazing. As opposed to, then I wrote in, what's healthy love for the AI, and the AI came up with, healthy love is characterized by mutual respect, trust, communication, and compromise. It involves supporting each other's growth and well-being and not relying on the other person to fulfill all of one's emotional needs. Wow. The AI knows what they're talking about. This is an AI that 99% of humans have very little clue about, and the AI is generating all this awareness. So if the AI can do this, maybe there's something we can learn from it. And you know, notice even when we talk about this, the characteristics of healthy love, trust, respect, communication, compromise, how much skill does it take to do those 4 or 5 things? I mean, just trust alone. There's no way you can trust if fear is high. Fear has to be low. For fear to be low, there's no way there can be cognitive distortions there. So you need to do cognitive behavioral therapy work where you reduce dramatically all or nothing thinking, catastrophizing, fortune telling, all the cognitive distortions that feed into fear So now the fears have to come down. And if fears can come down, then maybe there's an opportunity for trust. So now trust can increase. And if trust is there, we can co-build in a positive feedback loop behaviors that go along with trust, like committing to certain plans and seeing what happens from that empirically and seeing, oh, the other person is following through on that. And if I open up to them more, they respect that and they honor that, not with manipulation or control or pain. They honor that with support and love and nurturing. So let me open up even more. And I see even more support and trust coming. Let me do that even more. And you have this positive feedback loop that keeps increasing, where then you're building on trust and open communication and support and well-being and bringing all the wisdom skills and forgiveness and humor and all the other things that openness to the world, personality characteristic that can change over time if these other things are there. So all these things are all waiting, impossible to do with a dysfunctional partner, but 100% doable with a partner who's also doing them and living a developmentally oriented life. And at least it has a modicum of, again, everybody's on the developmental trajectory. But if the person has a lot to deal with, they need to do some of that work. They have the responsibility to do some of that work. And it's simply unfair to put it on us. And it's unfortunate for us to allow them to do so. And so we, again, have limited time. There's only so much we can, there's only so much, there's a reason why a lot of the jokes in the world have to do with marriages and relationships, right? There's another fun joke, said, my son wanted to know what marriage is. I told him, leave me alone. And when he did, I asked him why he was ignoring me. It's like, yeah, welcome to dysfunctional interactions. Welcome to personality disorders. Or how clueless some folks. There's another fun joke. I once gave my husband the silent treatment for an entire week. When it was over, he said, wow, we really got along well this week. We didn't even argue once. So I had a couple in therapy that actually said that. So, she left for about 2 months to the other house across the country. And I said, we haven't talked in a while. How's the last month been? He goes, actually, I think we're getting better. It's been pretty good. We barely argued. I go, really? What's been going on? She's been staying at the Boston house while I'm here in California. And he was serious. So there's a lot of work to be done there. And these folks were in their 70s, married 40 years. So if you think life can't pass us up in this mode, then talk to this couple. So all that is to say that there's a sobering awareness to have about what dysfunctions are, what pathologies are, how much work it would take to get through, to develop abilities. We're not even talking about yet advanced abilities, like having a relationship with almost zero yelling or name calling. In fact, zero yelling and name calling, and not just zero yelling and name calling, but phenomenal amount of nurturing, support, love, understanding, emotional intelligence. That actually is possible. But when people are in such a dysfunctional state, and it's such high frequency, there is no objective reality for someone to step in. There's no adult in the room to step in and say, none of this is necessary. It's like, oh, that's normal. That's how all relationships are. No, that's not how all relationships are. That's how 90% of them are, which are mostly dysfunctional. And of those 90%, 20% are pathologically dysfunctional. But the other 50%, the normal ones, they're no prize either in terms of some yelling and name calling and so on. They're on a continuum of borderline or personality disorders and all the rest. But it doesn't have to be that way. If fear is low and emotional intelligence is high and empathy is high and mindfulness is high, there is no yelling, ever, not once. At worst, there's some frustration, that the reaction to that frustration, it doesn't mean there's no conflict or disagreement. Of course, there's conflict, disagreement. I have conflict and disagreements with myself, Of course, there's going to be conflicts and disagreements with my partner. But how do we meet those conflicts and disagreement with no yelling or name calling? There's openly curiosity, humility, empathy. It's like, if I respect my partner and we disagree on something, it's interesting. It's like, really? You don't think that? Why is that? It's an interesting conversation to have. I may actually learn something from that conversation, rather than you need to think what I think and do what I say. It's like, seriously? And I'm going to start yelling and screaming if you don't. Like, wow. And by the way, if I'm tired or grouchy, it's going to be even worse. Like, no, none of that. Tired or grouchy are simply opportunities to practice regulating your emotions before we even start talking. And if I'm tired or grouchy, I need to do the same. And to realize that it's my responsibility to do the same, not yours. And respecting our partner is fundamental to that. If I respect my partner, I'm curious what they have to say, and humility helps, but I'm generally curious. If you don't respect your partner, if you're not curious what they have to say genuinely, it means you don't really respect them much. And if you don't respect your partner much, what are you doing with them? Let them go. Somebody else will respect them for who they are. You're not doing them any favors by holding on to them. Not only are they a placeholder, an opportunity cost to you, you're an opportunity cost to them. And sometimes it's even worse, because sometimes it's one-sided, and sometimes partners feel more love one-sided than the other, or more respect. And we say, I'll still give you a second, third, fourth, 10th chance, but I'm not impressed. And frankly, my love and tolerance and everything else is pretty low. But if you're willing to be on the receiving end of that for a few years, let's see if we can make this work. As if somehow that's a big prize for them, to be on the receiving end of that for a few years. That's brutal for them too. So it's a lose-lose in many ways. Somebody once said, don't try to teach a donkey to juggle, because they can't, and it annoys the hell out of the donkey. So there's that too. Sometimes people will make promises and do things in order to win over the other person in a desperate way. And that's not really what their passion or their vision for life is, but they pretend it is for them. And not only they pretend for the other person, they pretend for themselves. And everybody colludes on that until a couple of years pass and they realize, yeah, that wasn't good to pretend that that's what I really want. I really don't. And that's not really me, and that's not really how I want to live. And it's important to have that awareness, that self-awareness. And of course, things can change, but the likelihoods, for all the reasons we've talked about, are low. And the potential for having an amazing relationship, first of all, with ourselves in life, developmentally. If we ourselves are living a developmentally oriented life and are fully embracing that, we really owe it to ourselves and the future potential partners who are also living developmentally oriented lives to be free to do that, rather than to maintain a placeholder that's taking up the opportunity costs with dysfunction. So it's not pretty. It's not, it's not a rosy picture. It's not a happily ever after for everyone, but it's the reality. And time is passing. So you could see why I talk about this as in terms of idealism. And in the meantime, too, if we have to adjust to something dysfunctional, there's a wonderful quote by Krishnamurti, a phenomenal philosopher and thinker of the 20th century. And he said, there's no measure of health to be well adjusted to a profoundly sick society. So if we have to adjust to a sick society and then we are dysfunctional, it's not just our dysfunction, we're trying to adapt to something highly dysfunctional. So when we have to adjust to a dysfunctional relationship, we will display some dysfunctional features and practice matching the dysfunction. by definition, we're meeting a dysfunction, we'll have to meet it here. And then there's dysfunction over here, we'll have to meet it here. So our path is being guided by dysfunction. And if we do that 1,000 times, our thinking and our behaviors and so on are getting used to it. Our neural cell networks in our brains are getting used to that. And we start adapting in that direction versus, for example, nothing but trust and hope and where if you don't get attacked ever for 5 years, your brain will be so calm that there'll be no nuance of fight flight. But if you go into fight flight every day for a few years, then the notion of trust is pretty foreign to the brain. And if the trust is low, from a Jungian psychology point of view of being aware of your own shadow, of developing growth, of facing things in the world and the universe that are pretty scary, like the fact that our identity may be an illusion and everything is interconnected and things like that, to start even beginning to talk about things like that when we're too afraid even to say something to our partner, good luck. There's a Grand Canyon away from that insights. So there's no way our brain will open up to that extent when it's too busy practicing fear at the low levels, the day-to-day levels. So the costs are monumental on many levels, not just the opportunity cost for a good relationship or good health, but opportunity cost for major development in lots of the ways spiritual traditions have talked about. And so, of course, that's just my opinion. I could be wrong. So that's what I have to say about all that. And in the afternoon, we can talk more about, we can dialogue on this. So the idea there would be to have a workshop for an hour, and anything questions anybody has on any of this, I'd be happy to dialogue on and answer any questions. So thank you for your attention and time, and glad to be here.
Thank you, Shani. I'm just bubbling because this, of course, is my wheelhouse and I have so many things to say, but I'm honoring our time. And so I want to make sure everybody has a moment to hydrate and have a snack and come back to the workshop with us. So the workshop's just going to be an extension of this now. Q&A with this wise, compassionate relationship psychologist expert here that is just gifting us with his expertise, his heart, and wisdom. Thank you so very much. There's so many great things that you spoke about today. And so we'll just take those to the workshop. I do want to see if anybody has dropped anything here in the chat. Michael Allen said, OMG, I'm so grateful for the clear understanding of the personality disorders. Hi, Cherise. Pat was here. Welcome. Jan says, approaching conflict with curiosity. Yes. Thank you so much, Shani, says Dave. Great, Shani. Thanks. Wow, so deep, Pat. Yeah, you know what? It's such an important conversation, and this might ruffle some feathers, but I think it's an avoided conversation in the spiritual communities a lot because it's so like love and light, love and light. And one of the things that I had to get really clear about at one point in my life is unconditional love doesn't necessarily mean unconditional tolerance. And I had that really mixed up for a long time because it's so easy for me to love and kind of see past the red flags, so to speak, and just see the light in everybody. And that's, the empath in me, I suppose. And so getting clarity about some of these, ideas we have, I guess, in the spiritual community about, I want to say kind of like a spiritual bypass of some of these topics that really need to be addressed, that it's not only wise, it's healthy to address and recognize and talk about. So thank you, Shani, for bringing that to us and having the, the expertise behind it to really talk about these things. I am going to shut my mouth because I can keep going. We will keep going. We are going to keep going. So join us in the workshop right now. Luinda says, thank you, Shani. So much food for thought. Yeah, I mean, indeed, so much food for thought. There was a time when I was young, when it would be like, love is all you need. And that's it, for a relationship. It's like, I think respect is now at the top of that list, like skillful communication. Try, it's like love is there. And yet, and that's why I think this conversation is so important to have.
Yeah. Or attraction. A lot of people find attraction. That's got to be the main thing in a relationship.
Oh,
And it's nice to have some attraction, but to make that somehow the highest priority. Let's finish with this joke. I had a one-night stand once that went terribly wrong. We're married now.
oh God.
So to allow, chemistry or sexual attraction to somehow supersede all these 3 or 4 major things that, like empathy and openness to experience and the other dimension that we talked about that are essential for positive relationships. That's also a common mistake, and which sometimes takes years before we realize, the attraction is all nice and good, but 5 minutes later, these other things are needed.
Right. And having a partner that's willing to, be in the skillful place and learn and grow. And like you even mentioned, like attachment, and who is the anchor, the wave, and the island? Is that Stan? I don't know. I've read too much. I think it gets all mixed together, but it's important to kind of know your person's what they're contending with within themselves, within their psyche, and learning. And so, Gottman is alongside SHANI Robins, experts. This is a great little one for Valentine's Day. 7 days to more intimacy, connection, and joy, the love prescription. But they have a plethora of wonderful material for this type of conversation too. So, okay, what I would like is for us to move over to our workshop link. And so just everybody take about 5 minutes here and get yourself some tea, water, whatever it is, and bring your questions and comments and everything to SHANI, because wow, what a gift to have him here with us to share and Zoom with us. Yeah, thanks, Nancy. Nancy just dropped the Zoom link. I appreciate that. Wonderful. Yay. So I love you all. Thank you for being here and staying with us. SHANI, thank you deeply for bringing your wisdom, for bringing your heart. Really, it's your heart, and you have such compassion for human development, and that's where all of this pours out of you from, and it's felt, your heart-centered intention, and I thank you for that. Really grateful.
I appreciate being here and the invitation. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. Okay, everybody, I'm going to bring up the prayer of divine awakening, and then we're going to switch over to our Zoom link. Nancy just dropped the link in our feed here on Facebook Live, and it is also on our homepage, brentwoodilc.org. So you can jump right in there. You will see SHANI's face, and then the link into the workshop. So prayer of divine awakening. It's a new day, a beautiful day, a new beginning. I embrace this day with new eyes, an open heart, and expansive mind. I choose my vibrational frequency deliberately and consciously, harmonizing with life's events. I am receptive to source energy. Divine guidance and wisdom available to me at all times. I commit to serve unconditional love fully and completely. I move forward in a state of appreciation and extension of the one magnificent power and presence. I am sovereign, whole, and free, claiming dominion over my life as I go in peace and awaken to my divinity. And so it is. Shine on, bright beings. I look forward to seeing you in about 5 minutes on our workshop link. Thank you, SHANI. I love and appreciate you.
Likewise.
See you in a few.